amount of research out there over the past 7+ years of really how do we learn physiologically. How is higher ed and or the tech products integrating this new learning into what you do?
Let me turn that to Eileen.
Yeah. I think that there is a lot of interest in the results from learning science, from neuroscience, and I would say that spaced repetition and recall, are probably the most regularly incorporated into tech products. I mean, if I don't know if you're familiar with that, but essentially it's advice from neuroscience as to how we learn is that, don't cram the night before. If you are studying, space out your studying, and then also that quizzing yourself, and it's the act of recall that actually is what cements something and helps people learn when they're trying to master new content. And so the tech products, something that's as simple as, people may think flashcards are stupid, but simple as Quizlet and some of the online flashcards are things that when people are trying to master new content, I'm not, obviously we want students to be critical thinkers and learners, but there also is a whole piece of higher education which is mastering new content and learning new skills. And so I would say that really those two, spaced repetition and then recall, are in lots of tech products today.
So I've been looking for something to argue about on the panel, because panels are a lot better if you argue. So the interesting thing about your question, and even part of your answer, Eileen, is that it depends on your definition of learning, okay? So as a worker, we don't use flashcards, okay? We got access to information. So I believe that information's important, but I believe a lot of programs go too much to just trying to say, okay, we got to learn these 4 ways because this is what the brain research. Hold on, not done yet. All right, this is what I like. Because the brain research isn't done yet. Hold on, turn off your mic and then.
That's why you got fired.
That's stealing your
But it's really all right. Ignore my sneakers. But it's really, when it comes down to it, and it's about being engaged. And that's very different. Then you can use things, but if you're not engaged, knowing that repetition does this, or this is the best time to start, that don't mean nothing. So, hold on. There we go.
Okay.
There we go. I'll turn mine off.
Well, I'm with you on this, but there's also, the research that shows that contextually your background knowledge actually has a very strong influence on what you're able to learn. And so this is the challenge that the educators really are dealing with. And the guy who wrote Teach Like a Champion has a great example of this. He had a section on baseball. That basically, if you knew baseball, you could decode and understand and respond to the questions. But if you had, were from another country that never, where you weren't familiar with baseball, you just wouldn't be able to get it. And so, this is the challenge. I say technology, apply it, depend on what your issue is. It could be administrative, it could be research, it could be academic, it could, it's a tool. And so it's really going to depend on what your problem is, what you want to actually use. And that's what makes it a challenge, right? Because not everybody in the room knows all of the things out there that they could apply to their problem. And I think that is actually an interesting topic for conversation.
Hold on a second, Howard, before you cut me off. So I do admit that I sometimes take for granted the contextual knowledge people have, but that doesn't kind of change my stance. The book Teach Like a Champion. How many have read that book? It's kind of a K-12 book.
It's more K-12.
Yeah. But it talks about how to be efficient in a way that's not efficient. So it teaches you how to pass papers down here so you save a minute and a half. It teaches things when it's really about the bigger picture engagement. All right. See if I can get an argument going with Nick here.
And sometimes you don't need neuroscience to know what a certain population needs to be successful. Dennis, you were talking about how you're not comfortable relying fully online for some of the population you work with, and that's kind of borne out. If you look at the developmental population, there was some research out of the California higher education system that online learning was not as effective as face-to-face when you were dealing with developmental students. Those students needed more face-to-face contact, more interaction. Even though you can design courses, and we've done this at our college to make them as best as possible for the developmental student, that face-to-face element was critical. And I think one of the presenters this morning was talking about the success in using a hybrid model for developmental. So you can gauge a population based on, I think you're talking about that background knowledge, and if the student's not coming to the table with as much background or as much experience, then maybe technology needs to be modified in that case. Nick?
That's just my 2 cents. I'm not going to argue with you. Just in thinking about that question, I always tend to fall back on, I mentioned the Bransford book, How People Learn. And in that book, they relied on 30 years of research that basically boiled it down to 3 things. Students come into learning situations with preconceived notions, preconceived knowledge. And if you're going to be effective, you have to figure out a way to bring that to the surface so that you can dispel misunderstandings, misconceptions. Secondly, you have to provide a way to give content knowledge, because you do have to draw upon the deep retrieval knowledge base in order to be effective. And then lastly, and probably most importantly in my book, is the development of metacognition, metacognitive ability, basically understanding yourself as a learner in a reflective way and knowing how to self-regulate your learning. And the reason that I am so into learner-based, learner-centered education is because it's the only one that I'm aware of that actually hits all 3 of those points.